here's the super stereo vocal delay trick. And the reason why this is cool is because sometimes reverb doesn't work on a vocal, it just sounds too washed out. And other times, you'll find that just a mono delay just sounds like a delay. It makes it sound too affected. And the super stereo delay trick spreads things out, gives it kind of an edge without it sounding like there's anything on it. So let's have a listen to this vocal soloed without any effect on it.
Even though you don't say much, I feel like I can tell. You're just about done and you had enough of living alone in your self-made hell.
What we're going to do is we're going to put a different delay time on each side. And in this case, what I've done is I've put an eighth note delay on the left side and I've put an eighth note triplet delay on the right. Now, that's kind of the key. We're putting everything in time, making sure that there's different times on both sides. And everything is timed to the track. In this case, it's 74 beats per minute. So what I'm doing is I'm timing everything to 74 beats per minute. And actually, Pro Tools does that quite nicely. All you have to do is put the tempo in, and it will figure that out for you. Now, the other thing is it's always nice to have either a triplet on one side or a dotted note delay on one side. Here's what happens when we actually listen to this, again solo.
Even though you don't say much, I feel like I can tell. You're just about done and you had enough of living alone in your self-made hell.
Now, what ends up happening there is it spreads it all out and gives it an affected quality, but yet it still keeps the vocal in the middle, which is what we want, and it just makes it feel a little more present. Let's listen in the track.
Even though you don't say much, I feel like I can tell. You're just about done and you had enough.
Okay, I'm going to play it again without the effect, then I'm going to put it in as well. Here we go.
Even though you don't say much, I feel like I can tell. You're just about done and you had enough of living alone in yourself.
In this case, it's very subtle, but what it does is it does give the vocal a different feel, more polished feel. Now, if we want, we could turn this up as well. So let's listen with it a little louder.
Even though you don't say much, I feel like I can tell. You're just about done and you had enough of living alone in your self-made hell.
It sounds pretty good, actually. Once again, let's listen soloed.
Even though you don't say much, I feel like I can tell.
You really notice it there, but you don't notice in the track.
Even though you don't say much, I feel like I can tell.
Sound affected at all, it just sounds more polished. It sounds smoother. Pretty good, huh? You can check out all the other cool tricks at 101mixtricks.com. Now let's try it with some different delay times on it. Once again, what I have on the left side is an eighth note delay. It's 202 milliseconds, 202.7. On the right side, it's an eighth note triplet. Now let's just play with this a little bit, and we'll bring this out. We'll make it quarter notes. Let's have a listen.
Even though you don't say much, I feel like I can tell.
And of course, it's a lot more dramatic when we do that. So let's listen in the track.
Even though you don't say much, I feel like I can tell.
Let's bring that down because it's a little too dramatic.
Even though you don't say much, I feel like I can tell. You're just about done and you had enough of living alone in your self-made.
It's actually a good example. Just about the time we begin to hear it in the mix, that's the perfect level. If we hear it too much, then we've added too much. In other words, if we hear it distinctly, then we've added too much. Another thing I want to show you here is that I have a little bit of feedback on. It's not much. It's 7% on one side, 9% on the other. And that's basically just about 1 or 2 repeats at the most. So we don't want too many repeats because too many repeats will mean that it will get a little too long. And what it will do is it will start to sound a little more muddy because of that. Let's try some other times just so you can hear. What if I did a triplet and let's say 2 different triplets, but a quarter and an eighth note.
Even though you don't say much, I feel like I can tell. You're just about done and you had enough of living alone in your self-made hell. I can see from your broken...
Now what happens there is, because they're both triplets, it sounds almost like a ping pong. It's going back and forth. And we don't want that. We want it a little more random than that. So that's why we would always keep one as either a quarter or an eighth, or even less than that, a 16th note. And we'd have a triplet or a dotted note. Let's add a dotted note. See what this is like.
Even though you don't say much, I feel like I can tell. You're just about done.
And what happens here is it sort of leans to the right because it's a much longer delay. So, in fact, we'd probably be better off if this were something like, if they're both closer together. Well, let's see if we had that. Let's have a listen here, because now what we have is a triplet on the left, and we have a dotted note delay on the right. Let's have a listen.
Even though you don't say much, I feel like I can tell. You're just about done and you had enough of living alone in your self-made hell. I can see from...
Now it sounds a little better. When you have too much of a gap between the left and the right side, it will seem to lean to one side because the longer delay will stick out a bit more. And if there's less of a gap between the left and right side in terms of delay time, you'll find that it just feels a little bit better and it will sit better in the mix. The other thing is, as you can see here, we're panned fairly wide. As a matter of fact, we're panned hard left and hard right. And if, in fact, we bring that in somewhat, the effect will be a little different, but it might work in the mix better. So let's do that. Let's bring this out. Let's put them fairly close to the center. Let's have a listen.
Even though you don't say much, I feel like I can tell. You're just about done and you had enough of living alone in your self-made hell. I can see from your broken smile.
It almost sounds like a mono delay at this point, so it doesn't have quite the same effect. What we're trying to do is we're trying to give it more life, and usually the wider the pan, the more life it seems to have. So for instance, if we go back and pan it all the way, have a listen.
Even though you don't say much, I feel like I can tell. You're just about done and you had enough.
Not only does it feel a little more alive, we also hear the effect a little less. So what it does is it gives the vocal presence without it seeming washed out and without it seeming affected. And sometimes this is the best thing that you can do in a mix. To summarize the super stereo vocal delay trick, first thing is insert a stereo delay on its own channel and send the vocal to it from an aux send. Now set the delay for either a quarter or an eighth note on one side and a dotted or a triplet note on the other. Set the feedback for a couple of repeats, and this could be 8%, 12%, somewhere around there. It depends on how fast the tempo of the song is. And finally, set the amount of the effect to taste, and you'll find it'll be a wide stereo effect that isn't washed out. And that's the super stereo vocal delay trick. You'll find a lot more cool mixing tricks that you can immediately use on your next mix in my 101 Mixing Tricks course. All you have to do is click on the link to get started immediately.